Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here to race number 8 of season 51 of the RTG Talladega Challenge, as we're here tonight for another 66 laps of racing, getting ever closer. 3 races left until we find out the 10 drivers that will be in this season's chase for the championship. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Zach Freeman. And Zach, the pressure is building for a lot of these guys that are down around that cut line.
Yep, only a couple more weeks to go to get into a position to put yourself in contention for the playoffs. So it's really go time. I think if you're anywhere between 15th to 20th in points, you got to really start being concerned now, because there's a lot of guys showing a lot of speed that haven't been running the entire season, so they're making their way up quickly through points and accumulating wins, and that puts you in a little bit of the hot seat as well. You can't be complacent for too long here, and I think we might see that start coming to fruition tonight, Seth.
Yeah, Jeremy Jeffries, of course, last week's winner. Tim Knopfsker the week before. They come into this race 25th and 28th in the standings. With their wins, they just have to be up in the top 20 at regular season's end to be eligible for a playoff spot. And the driver that has several times this season had to enter onto the track late, has not really gotten the best finishes because of that, actually will be running all the laps here tonight. And he is our pre-race interview driver, and that's number 45 of Bobby Farrell. Hey, Bobby, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
I got you loud and clear. How are you guys tonight?
Well, we're doing good. I know you're getting ready to climb into your race car here as cars are gridding up, but want to quickly ask you here tonight. We've seen that, unfortunately, you haven't been able to make the green flag in a number of the starts here this season. You're going to be running all the laps here tonight. So do we see that 45 trying to run at the front all night long?
Well, that's the plan, to get up front and just kind of bide my time, get through these pit stops, and, see where we're at the end of the race. But hopefully this 45 Ford Mustang be up at the front of the pack, battling it out for the win.
You're only about, I think, 57 points behind 20th in the standings. You looking to win here tonight to try and then point your way into the top 20, get one of those playoff spots with 3 races remaining here?
It'd be nice, but unfortunately with my other schedule, I don't really want to take a playoff spot away from, a driver that would be able to do something with it. But it'd be nice to, kind of break into it at the same time.
Well, Bobby, you're going to be rolling off here tonight, it looks like, from the 21st position mid-pack. So hopefully we'll see you make your way to the front quickly and be able to keep it up there. Best of luck tonight.
Thank you, and hopefully we'll be you'll be talking about me from the front of the field instead of the back of the field.
Look forward to seeing how Bobby Farrell does here tonight. As you'll notice here on the front row, it's Joe DeSpirito picking up his 5th pole of the season. Of course, he had that streak of 4 in a row at the beginning of the year, and then the likes of Bob Seminara and Bernie Mobbs took some turns up there at the top of the qualifying results. But you'll also notice that it's a generic car, and the reason for that is because Joe DeSpirito didn't get to turn any laps in practice. He got in here just before qualifying, but man, laid down a heck of a lap time, tying Bernie Mobbs' pole lap from last week.
Yeah, I think Chuck was or Chuck. My apologies. Joe was just trying to add a little levity to the equation. He ruined everybody's apologies, fantasy bracket standings. So he figured he would just come in and josh around with us a little bit, but I think he's gonna do just fine. Joe DeSpirito has not finished outside the top 10 all season long. I believe he's only got one finish outside the top 5. So there's a pretty good reason why he's sitting up top there on points, but he's got a pretty quick field to lead to the green here with Chuck Mcclure and Jess Shelton right behind him.
Mcclure going to be, I believe, the highest that he has qualified here this season. She said on the outside of the front row. Shelton lines up there in 3rd. That, I believe, is her highest starting spot of the season. And Bernie Mobbs, who had the pole last week, he's going to roll off from 4th. Row 3 is going to find Mark Paglia and Bob Seminara. Josh Metallic and Tim Nofskar, winner from 2 weeks ago, are going to be in row 4. 143 of Bob Dixon in 9th, and 10th will be Grant Wesley. I'm hearing here, we'll go through the rest of the grid in just a moment. I am hearing that the 712 of Bob Seminara, the reason that we don't see him here on the grid and we didn't see him get on track, he is having some pedal problems. So, bit of an issue for the driver that came into this race second in points.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not a good way to start your night for Bob. You see, I don't know. He's right down there at the bottom in turns 1 and 2. It's almost like he gets it going and then it cuts out again. So that's a bad time for that to happen, but I guess it's probably better now than when he's in the middle of a pack during a green flag run here. So getting pretty close to going to green. What do you say, Seth? How you feeling tonight?
I mean, it's a big field again. Looks like a total of 36 drivers going to be taking the green flag in this one. And we know that, if we reach the threshold of about 30 drivers, everybody racing in close proximity, we end up seeing quite a number of cautions during the course of the race. But in the past couple of weeks, we've seen drivers be able to make it to at least that first round of green flag pit stop. So, we're going to have to wait and see how this one is with what I believe is our biggest field of the season so far.
Yep, these boys are out en masse, and we see the 712 Seminara. His car is again sitting on pit road, so he's not going to make the green flag. That's going to hurt him, sitting second in points, just 8 back of Joe DeSpirito. Not how you want to start your night. As we bring him down, they look to be coming through the tri-oval. Green flag in his hands. Joe DeSpirito going to lead him down into 1 and 2, aside Chuck Mcclure.
And probably people are wondering, well, Bob Seminara's got 2 wins this season. He's up in the top 10 in the points, so he's going to be in the playoffs. The thing is, he came into this race only 8 points behind his teammate Joe DeSpirito for the overall points lead. If you win the regular season championship, that is 10 playoff points you take into that chase.
Well, fortunately for Bob, too, he's got a couple wins on the season, so he doesn't have too much to worry about. It's just if he's going to get running tonight, that puts you at a huge disadvantage unless we get a handful of cautions to help him get back up to speed. But hopefully him and his crew will get that figured out here pretty quick. Low line out to an early lead. It's a little something different than Joe DeSpirito's used to on these initial race starts.
And Jessica Shelton now going to jump up to the top side, trying to give that line some momentum. Chuck Mcclure right behind her, along with Bernie Mobbs. Woo! Mark Paglia looked a little squirrely there in between Joe DeSpirito and Josh Metallic on that inside line.
Yeah, that Wood Brothers colored paint scheme there for Paglia. He's put together a string of really good runs here the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's really boosted him up there in the points. So I think that gives you a lot of confidence, especially out here at Talladega, where you've got a lot more opportunity to get yourself in position to take a victory. See if you can maybe bring one home here tonight.
Yeah, he's up there inside of the top 10. The thing he's got to worry about, though, is he's currently tied for 7th with Josh Metallic. I'm looking at some of these guys down there, 7th through 10th in the standings, like Metallic, Paglia, Elliser, Richard Martin. Now, while that's great for them to be running up there inside the top 10 and under normal circumstances would probably get them a spot in the playoffs, we have to remember, too, that Jeremy Jeffries is only about 40 points behind 20th. Tim Nofsker is only about 60 points behind 20th. If either one or both of them get up into the top 20 with their wins in the last 2 weeks, drivers 9th and 10th in the points at the end of this regular season, they're eliminated.
Yeah, and with 3 races remaining before the playoffs here, 40 points, that's totally achievable. You can overcome that deficit. So seeing them run here on a regular basis again, as you see them 3 wide up front, Shelton looks to be stuck in the middle, that low line being led by Despirito and Paglia, still running pretty well. But yeah, 40 to 50, even 60 points with 3 races to go, especially when you have fields of, 36 race cars. You have yourself a good run, for a couple races, you find yourself right in contention there. They'll be back in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Saw Chuck Mcclure there. He went to the outside of Shelton. That kind of stalled out both the inside and outside line as Mcclure was trying to pick up Grant Wesley and Jeremy Jeffries, who were having some momentum in that third groove. Now the top 4, maybe top 5 on that inside line going to get single file as Bob Dixon's moved to 4th. Donnie Garrett up into the top 5 and 5th.
Yeah, and that bottom groove running single file like that, you can see how much more speed that they're making as opposed to those cars that are in that 3 wide. But Chris Emery in that 222 still hanging tough in the middle, trying to make some moves. Right now, he doesn't have a whole lot of help. Shelton looks to have the advantage on the low line as she'll put herself in about the 6th position there down low.
Billy Elliser and Sonny Tallman there as well in the 26 and the 55. Sonny Tallman running tonight without his teammate Dante Ricky. There's quite a number of drivers here this evening that are not in the field that we're used to seeing. We already just mentioned Dante as well as the 9 of Chris Elliott, but we do have a couple of new faces and a couple of drivers that are making only their second start of the season. You got Ron Larkin Jr. in the 73. He's back in the field here for a second straight week, and we've also got John Fagiorni here in the field tonight driving the 95 machine.
Yeah, both those boys making an appearance out here. I believe John Fagione comes from over at ECT. Not a stranger at RTG. He has run here before, as well as last week we talked about the amount of experience that Ron Jr. has. So it's good to see these guys around as these fields get bigger and bigger, man. I'm telling you, this Thursday night Tally Challenge is the place to be.
Definitely is, as right now you've got side-by-side battling going on for around the 6th position as Chuck Mcclure on the outside of Jessica Shelton. And the slow car up there, that's the 712 of Bob Seminara, who appears to have gotten his issue fixed with his pedals. And he is back out there on the track, but right now he is several laps down.
Yeah, and I think once he, if he can maintain this draft, as long as he's got everything in good working condition again, he'll be able to stay with these boys, hopefully make up a little bit of time. That's going to put him at about, a 7 to 8 lap advantage on fuel now, being as how he's just come out on the track, I believe. So he might be able to make a run, make a lap up there, get a wave around or a lucky dog. He could potentially make a couple laps up here if he just plays it smart and, we have something happen on the racetrack.
I think if I remember correctly, the most cautions we've had this season in a race are either 5 or 6. So I don't know if that would be enough if we had those here tonight for him to be able to get back on the lead lap with enough free passes. But right now they've been able to complete 6.5 laps under green flag conditions, and they have still remained 3 wide. They were 3 wide at the front. They're now 3 wide mid-pack around the 12th, 13th position. I believe that's Jeffrey Elliott up there in the outside line running that family channel scheme, a scheme that he's actually been running all week in several different series over here on RTG.
Yeah, I believe that's 1995 or 1996 Ted Musgrave throwback. You remember back when Ted Musgrave was driving for what is now Roush Fenway Racing in the 16 Ford Thunderbird. Sharp looking car. Cool to see schemes like that out here on the racetrack. And it looks like that middle line, they might be making a run at that low line with Despirito. Chuck Mcclure coming pretty good in the middle with Grant Wesley right behind him.
Yeah, Chuck Mcclure coming into this race, the highest in the point standings without a victory, 3rd in points. And right now being pushed by Grant Wesley, who has been kind of on and off with his starts here this season. I think he's missed 2 races so far this year, but despite that, still 6th in the point standings and a 2-time winner as Paglia almost up into his driver's side door.
Man, that was almost complete disaster. They get it sorted back out now. Whoa, we do got trouble coming off of turn 4 now. I think 4, 5, maybe 6 cars involved up into the wall.
Caution out as that is Germ Lewis in the 616. John Godfrey, left side of your screen. I believe that also was the 381 that got collected up in that one. The hot tamales machine of Sullins. There were a couple other drivers that spun down towards the pit road area as well.
Yeah, and if I had to guess, I would bet anything. That's probably when we look at the replay here, going to be a bit of an accordion effect from we saw Mark Paglia and the 88 of Grant Wesley get real close. I'm sure that there are guys that checked up immediately behind them when they saw that happen, and by the time that the cars came out of four, probably just a little closer than they had anticipated.
If we can pinpoint right where this happened, we'll focus on the 7-Eleven machine of Godfrey. See if maybe he gets a little help from behind by maybe the 38 behind him there of Rodney. Oh, no. Oh, who was that? I believe that was Wayne Pribnow, I think, that got into the back of the 95.
Yeah, I saw that 95 almost loses down low, but collects it. But yeah, those cars behind them, just nowhere really to go there. I'm not sure. I saw a little bit of a warp out of Prib now, so I'm not sure if that contributed or if it was just a little bit of a bump draft gone wrong. See Bob Seminara flying down pit road there to avoid the wreck. Looks like he might have missed it. But again, an opportunity for him to get a lap back out of that. So, Seminara, as long as he didn't get any damage out of that, he's sitting pretty right now.
Yeah, the fortunate thing here, twofold, is number one, it happened closer towards the rear of the field, so not as many drivers having to slice and dice their way through the wreck to avoid getting involved. The second good thing, I'm looking here in terms of the hits that were taken, and maybe aside from that 616 hitting the outside wall with the front end of his race car, everybody else looks like they may be okay in terms of damage wise for being up to speed. It looks like a violent hit there for Jerm Lewis. I don't know if that's going to be enough damage aerodynamically that's going to hurt him for the rest of this race.
Yeah, I don't know. But you also have to worry about, did it do any engine damage if he goes in and, even if it doesn't look too bad aesthetically, if they have to end up shutting it off and working on it from there, you could easily lose 10, 15 miles per hour. Can't even catch a draft. And if you can, you can't maintain it. So we'll just have to see if he can make up some speed here on the track now. Most of the leaders pinned there, Seth. It looks like Joe DeSpirito with that advantageous pit stall number one made it out first, but Grant Wesley made up quite a few positions. It looks like he came out in about second, and I think Paglia, Mcclure, and Jeffries would be third, fourth, and fifth there.
Interesting, these drivers coming to pit road now because they would still have to be on pit lane 2 more times before the conclusion of this race, as Terry Bombard's going to get himself a bonus point for leading a lap, and Terry coming into this race currently in the 20th position in points, so another driver that's inside the realm if he were to go to victory lane that could sneak himself up into a playoff spot. I mean, there's a lot of names that are inside of that top 20 that we could maybe see do just that. Wiley Coate, currently 12th. Cy Jones, 13th. Donnie Garrett, right now in 14th. He's been another driver who really started out the season slow, but has picked things up in the last 3 or 4 weeks. We know that he's got race-winning capabilities. Bob Dixon. Bernie Mobbs, he struggled last week, did Bernie. He dropped from 11th down to 15th, and, we know that he's got the speed to go to victory lane.
Yeah, all three of those Florida boys, we know when they get their cars on point they're always a force to be reckoned with. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of guys, in that top 20 that could easily put themselves into a playoff position. And there's a lot of guys even, within the top 10 in points right now that, by now in the season, you would think that you would see their name on the winners list, but they haven't quite gotten there yet. Chuck McClure, Josh Metallic, just a couple guys like that to name a few. You would figure, hey, these guys are really, really good on super speedways. It's a real surprise that they haven't won one yet.
You and I were talking pre-broadcast about drivers coming into this race with momentum, and the guy that we both were talking about specifically was Jeremy Jeffries, of course, winning the Tally Challenge last week. He also ended up winning the Triple X Series on Sunday night. We saw him go to victory lane here on FRN Tuesday night in the Winston Cup Series, and then he won last night as well over in the Air 88 Series. So it's been quite a past 7 days for the driver of the number 8 machine, and now trying to see if he can cap off this week with a second trip to victory lane in the Tally Challenge. Going to be rolling off, looks like 5th on this restart.
Yeah, a guy that comes in here with a ton of confidence, as you just mentioned, he's got more than a couple handful of wins. He's also got, I believe, one about a week ago in the Barebones Truck Series as well. He's just been putting on a real show, running real strong, running real consistently. But he always puts himself up front. He always keeps himself out of trouble. And when the race closes out, he's going to be a name that's going to be right up there at the top. So going to be interesting to see. Still early in the race, does he get a little bit aggressive and try to, get right up there to the lead, or does he just kind of hang where he's at right now in about sixth position there?
Yeah, because he's got to really maximize points here for these final 3 weeks. As we mentioned, he's about 40 points behind 20th in the standings. And you alluded to the fact that with the big field we've got here tonight, and the big fields we've actually had for the last couple of weeks, plenty of opportunity to be able to make up those points and those positions. But at the same time, you have to make sure that your car's in one piece in the closing stage to be able to pick up said points.
Yeah, well, that's just it, and I think that's the same for him and Tim Nofsker. Not only do you have to make sure your car's in one piece, if you realistically want to put yourself in, the top 20, being 40 to 60 points out, you have to get top 10 finishes. There's if you finish outside the top 10, I think in any one of these three races, without winning one of the others, I don't think that you make it in. But I think both of those guys are fully capable, and I'll be interested in seeing how this plays out over the next couple weeks.
Bob Seminara going around there, getting one of his laps back. I believe would need 4 more cautions, if my calculations are right, before he would be able to be back on the lead lap here, battling for what would be his 3rd win of the season, as it's going to be Joe DeSpirito and Grant Wesley now the front row. Mark Paglia and Chuck McClure in row 2. Top 5 completed by Jeremy Jeffries. Dave Melson going to roll off there in 6th. He's another driver. While he hasn't been to victory lane, he's had some very consistent runs this past week. He'll be rolling off 6th. Then it's Josh Metallic, Donnie Garrett, Jessica Shelton, and Chris Emery, the top 10 when we go back green on lap 13.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Dave Melson in that 13 car, another driver that has a ton of experience on these tracks. He runs really strong, he runs really well and really consistent. Another name in the bunch of drivers that we have out here on the racetrack that realistically could put himself in a spot to win at night's end. So we'll have to see how he does. He's doing really well. I think 6th place is a good spot to be here, 12 laps in, but that still also leaves another 50 55. So we'll see how that goes for him.
Now, last week, and I believe the week before, I've been kind of documenting this Tally Challenge bracket series that's been going on as well. Coming into this race, it is now the semifinals for the drivers in the winner's bracket. Joe DeSpirito versus Chuck McClure. You see them going to be kitty corner to each other, and Jessica Shelton against Bob Dixon. They're in close proximity to each other as well. If I had scrolled down, I would have realized as well there's actually a losers round where the winner of the losers round takes on the winner of the winners round, and we've got some rounds going on there as well, with Donnie Garrett versus Bob Seminara, Grant Wesley against Cy Jones. Terry Bombard will be moving on with Dante Ricky not in the field tonight, and Richard Martin versus Billy Elliser. So still a long ways to go here in this bracket series, and I didn't realize there was that many brackets going on.
Well, it's not Game of Thrones, but it is Game of Series. There's usually 3 or 4 series within the main series. I think that's probably the best way that Terry Bauman put it to us there last week when we talked to him. But, RTG, these guys always trying to give everybody an opportunity to maximize every race that they get out there and to have something to run for, because nobody wants to run just back of the pack with nothing to run for. So it gives everybody something to look forward to, and it's a lot of fun for these guys too.
Remember last week, I think it was Jeffries, Metallic, and McClure were the 3 cars we were looking at all lined up, and they were making a lot of speed. Well, now you've got Jeffries, Wesley, and McClure on that top side, and boy, I think they had about 2 to 3 miles per hour more speed down that backstretch, because they are pushing that number 8 Doritos Ford to the lead.
Yep, really, really fast race cars. We've seen that week after week after week with all 4 of those, and I think they're just making a ton more speed. It's not that bottom line, those cars aren't faster. I think a lot of, I think we interviewed somebody last week that actually said, that middle line is the place to be. It's where the car runs the fastest. It's where it's the most stable. So, when your cars are completely even with a group of equal cars, having one in one line just as many as there are on the other, you find that that is the case. That middle line is more advantageous, and we see 5 cars now that have gotten by to Spirit. Well, 4. Melson's still working on it, but they're just making a ton of speed up there.
Yeah, and you notice just how close the front bumper of Grant Wesley is to the back bumper of Jeremy Jeffries. That middle line affording you the opportunity to be able to have that close, tight draft. You and I have run in this series, Zach, and on that inside line, it is very difficult, especially on corner exit, to have your bumpers lined up that close because there's a lot of checkup that takes place, especially going into the turn.
Yep. There's a lot of checkup. But there's also the other thing that a lot of people, just watching this take for granted. You're also kind of sawing on that steering wheel a little bit to try to keep it down there and not drift up into that second line. So you scrub speed down there, and unless you get a really strong bump down the back, that middle line, man, that's I'm telling you, that's where it's at. That's the place to be. As we see Donnie Garrett now making moves to the inside of Dave Melson.
Yeah, you want to talk about a bump. Joe DeSpirito just gave a shove to Donnie Garrett, who came down to get that momentum, and DeSpirito did not lift. He gave him a good push into 3, getting him alongside of Dave Melson. So Garrett trying to get that inside line going, but not a lot of friends down there. It's just himself, DeSpirito, and Paglia.
Yeah, 3 against 5 just isn't going to work. And you're going to see Josh Metallic is going to be carrying a ton of momentum by the time he gets to the rear end of Dave Melson. So I'll be interested to see as he tows along Tim Nofsker with him, whether or not they go to that third line or if they stick right to the back bumper, because they're going to have, I would bet a good 2 or 3 miles per hour on him by the time they catch him.
Side by side there for the 6th position. And I was noticing about a lap ago, just all the way back through the field, down the back straightaway, drivers were fanned out 3 wide, but it was kind of a broken up 3 wide. Almost looked like multiple games of tic-tac-toe. They've all gotten themselves lined up into 2 lanes now, a lot more organized up here all the way through the field. But it was kind of interesting because I'm not sure if drivers were just trying to give room, if they were trying to choose which lines they wanted. It was a very interesting formation down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it was a little bit of all of those options, if we're going to be completely honest. And now we see Josh Metallic just made a really aggressive move down to the inside of the racetrack. Tim Nofsker was right on his back bumper, and you see Donnie Garrett's hooked up with him now. Watch out for those 3 on the bottom. I think they could make some speed. I think if they get a little help, they'll be a little bit faster, but I think that's your best option to make up time on that low side.
Yeah, if you're going to have somebody lead either the inside or outside line, whichever line's at a disadvantage, you've got to have a fast car out there to lead them, because if it's a car that just cannot lead a line, it's going to go nowhere. As looks like they're going to pick up a little bit of help there. Joe DeSpirito and Mark Paglia still pinned on that inside line. And I believe that's Bobby Farrell, the driver that we talked with pre-race, that's about to catch up to these guys as well. But it's only 6 drivers down the bottom. There's about 20 drivers up in that middle line.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. There's too many cars. And, that middle line, give them credit, because not only are they lined up, but they're keeping about a perfect distance between each of their cars, with the exception of maybe Grant Wesley and Jeremy Jeffries bump drafting the entire time. So they're making good time and good speed up here. I think if they stay like this, we might see them run like this until green flag pit stops.
But we also know that with so many cars up there running that middle line, more than likely, after a time, drivers are going to start to get a little bit restless with riding, and we're probably going to maybe see that third line come into play again. We saw them 3 wide in the early stages of this race.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see if, somebody did try it, but I think it's going to be entirely dependent on whether or not they have help. I think it's far more likely to see somebody jump out there and see if they can make a move. But you also have to take into consideration, what's the guy behind him thinking? Is he as restless as that guy that's trying to make the move, or is he content riding as we approach only 20 laps in now at this point?
You talked about the possibility of green flag pit stops. These guys went back green on lap 13, so we're looking somewhere in the vicinity of about lap 32 when these drivers would have to come to pit road for their first pit stop under green flag conditions. We've only worked 1 caution so far in this race, and I believe everybody that was involved in that wreck have actually continued on. Stefan Martel in the 57 now coming to pit road. A lot of rear end damage on his machine. I don't remember seeing him get caught up in that wreck off of turn 4.
I think I may have seen his car there, but I'm not entirely sure. I think he may have actually been the car that the 616 spun up into, or the 00. I think he was involved. I'm not entirely positive. Right now, though, that low line, you see a couple more cars jumping down there. It looked like Richard Martin was going to try to stick it in there ahead of the white car. I can't see what number that is right at the moment, but they're picking up a couple more cars. But every time, I feel like every time they pick up a couple cars, they lose a couple of that outside line as they fall farther and farther back as well.
And Billy Elliser, the 26 car, ninth in points, had a great run last week, moving from 12th to ninth in the standings. And, I was looking at the statistics coming into this race as well. Billy Elliser has the 10th highest average finish as well, a 13th place average finish in the first 7 races of the season. And, while that isn't up there with the likes of Seminara and Despirito and whatnot, it is enough to have him currently in a playoff position.
Yeah, and that's all you got to do. You have to give yourself that opportunity. If you don't give yourself the opportunity, you're never going to be in the playoffs. It's not going to matter. But if you just chip away at it week after week after week, and you can make sure that you maintain a spot in the top 15 with a couple good runs mixed in with, you'll always have a bad one here and there. It is mathematically possible to point your way in, and then that's exactly what he's doing with a real good showing here tonight.
We're 3 wide in the middle of the pack. Carson Krentz stuck in that middle line along with Glenn Harris, Despirito and Pagli on the inside. And that was Jeffrey Elliott along with Bob Dixon, Terry Bombard, and Sonny Tallman trying to get that third outside line going. Looks like they've also picked up, I think that's Ron Larkin Jr. in the 73. Wiley Coates drifting up there along with Robbie Nices. So that third line, if it gets more numbers, they could start making some forward progress.
Yeah, they're making numbers right now, but I don't know. I think those top 4 cars, maybe even top 5 with Melson there, they seem pretty content to just ride it out to green flag pit stops. And if I had to guess, that's probably exactly what they're doing. They're accumulating other cars behind them, but with as big as that middle line is right now, as many cars as are in it, I think it's going to be really hard to organize something on the outside or the inside without just going back to 2 lines. Just won't be enough cars, not enough horsepower.
You saw Bernie Mobbs dropping down there in front of fellow Charger Billy Elliser, trying to see if he can get that inside line moving, but looks like he's now going to move back up into that middle groove right between Tim Nofsker and Donnie Garrett. We've got about the top 12 right now, all single file, but still pushing each other in a very tight draft down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and you see Bernie Mobbs really trying really hard down on the inside. He's on the low side of Josh Metallic right now. Got a good run. Look to have a few miles per hour on him entering turn 3 there. But again, just there's so many cars in that middle line right now. It's hard to make up that speed. As you see that line that was the third line now has fallen almost completely off of that middle line completely, with the exception of the 77.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to Donnie Garrett there, but he lost touch with Tim Nofsker in that middle line. It might have been when Bernie Mobbs dropped down to the inside. He is stuck in the sucker hole, and he is dropping to the back in a hurry.
Yeah, and you see the 088 stuck in that hole right now. But that low line, only 3 cars deep. It looks like it's lost connection with the cars that were behind them. That's going to hurt them a lot. That's going to slow them down quite a bit as they work their way through the corner. That you see Mobbs right to the inside of Nofsker, makes up a little bit of time, but off the corner, you see the 88 is going to get right back up on that bumper, that 39 again.
Saw the 57 of Stefan Martel coming down pit road earlier. He's actually taken his car back to the garage area, so officially the first retiree from this race.
That's a shame for Stefan. It happened so early in the race. There was a lot of way to go, but you hate to see that. But now the 39 and the 088 again on the inside. They jump down in front of Bernie Mobbs. But again, that low, it just starts to fall apart. And you see the leaders now going to move right down to that low lane too. So I'll be interested in seeing this. Do people start jumping to the middle line now that the leaders have gone low? See if they can, present a little bit more of a challenge than what they've been able to so far.
I think the reason that a number of these leaders have now jumped to that inside line is because we're about 7 laps away from what's going to be green flag pit stop. So they're now putting themselves down in position of a defensive line to make sure that they're going to have a clean entry into pit lane if we do reach that point when these drivers are going to have to come down to the pit lane. I don't honestly think you're going to see a second or third line try and charge unless you've got a couple of guys back here that maybe topped off the fuel tank under our only caution, can maybe make it an extra lap or 2 and would stay out that extra lap as well when these leaders pit.
Yeah, you see Richard Martin, man, he's trying to get that second line going, but they've just lost so many cars to that inside line. You see the 60 of Perry Bond right behind him, and Jeffrey Elliott. I would like to think, if Jeffrey Elliott could tuck in behind Bond, they might be able to make a little progress here. But at this time, that low line, they're just all one real long line there, and they're checking out on the rest of these guys that are three. Oh no, we got trouble.
Oh, Richard Martin gonna hook
Big
Perry
hit.
Bond. Oh, Bob Seminaris collected. Oh my goodness, that's Chris Emery way up in the air. That's about the highest I've seen a car catch air at Talladega in a long time. Is that 222 had to have been about 50 feet off the ground.
Hard hits there. Hard hits. It looked like a couple together. It looked like a couple cars got together there, I don't know, right around the area where they were three wide. I'm trying to see exactly where it started, but one car shot down the track, another car shot up the track, and it looked like we had a couple cars that were airborne all at once. The 222 made contact with the 056, and man, that's probably one of the crazier wrecks that I've seen in a long time. That's a big one.
Jeffrey Elliott was on the top side of that three wide. I think it was some bumper grab between Richard Martin and the 43 and the 60 of Perry Bond. Sent the 60 up into Jeffrey Elliott. I believe Bob Seminaris, I think he got a piece of that one.
Yeah, there was just a bad bump draft in the middle of the trial over there. That was a bad spot to have that happen too, because that was right in front of that three wide, and those cars shot up across the track so fast that the cars even coming on the low line, you couldn't react fast enough to yoink it down there to the apron of the track. And man, hard hits there. That's going to end a couple days for sure.
No doubt. Jeffrey Elliott looked like a little bit of a warp there into Chris Emery, which is what sent them up into the air. I think Wayne Pribnow may have gotten a piece, either that or he was into the wall trying to slow down to avoid the wreck. And we've been told this particular portion of the track in the tri-oval, it's where the car handles the worst. It's where the car is the lightest, and it's also one of the more difficult areas to be able to avoid a wreck when it takes place.
Yeah, and the 056, man, when him and the 222 got airborne, the 056 came down right on the deck lid of that 56 car. 56, man, you hate to see that for him, because he almost had that wreck cleared. And the next thing you know, Jeff Crivello's got a passenger in the back of his car there. So crazy wreck here at Talladega.
Absolutely. You saw the 00 back there. Wayne Pribnow did indeed spin. You mentioned Crivello involved in this one, along with the 712 of Bob Seminara. I believe Seminara got damaged, but I don't know if he was necessarily called as being involved in the incident. So I think he would be in line for a lucky dog here, but I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah, we'll have to see exactly how that plays out. Haven't heard anything from race control yet, so we'll find out in a moment. Looked like a bunch of the leaders came in, got fuel topped off. This was really close to their pit window under green flag stops too. So rather than having this happen under green, we're going to re-rack the field and see how racy that they're going to get for the second half of this race.
And I have been told that with making this pit stop now, since it was so close to when they were going to have to come down into green flag conditions, only one more pit stop will be necessary for these drivers to make it the rest of the way. It looks like Grant Wesley will actually be leading his first laps of the day, because he will be cycling around as the leader over Chuck Mcclure and Jessica Shelton. I have to wonder what happened to our race leader when that caution came out, which I believe was I'm trying to remember who it even was now.
Yeah, I'm not
Was it Jeffries? I think Jeffries was the leader.
Yeah, Jeremy Jeffries. I'm showing him. Looks like he's in about 10th position behind Tim Nofsker. Must have just had. I wonder if he had a really bad pit stop, or he that's really strange.
All the way back to 8th is where he's going to restart after being out in front pretty much for the majority of that last green flag run. So yeah, I'm not sure what happened to him there. Jeremy started this race up inside of the top 10, I do believe. Oh no, he started 12th, so I'm not sure where it would have had his pit stall. and may have made some contact with someone on pit road, either going in or coming out. Not sure.
Yeah, not sure. Without some sort of catastrophic incident, it's not typical to lose that many spots on pit road. Unless everybody else ahead of him took 2 tires and he took 4, but I find that highly unrealistic myself. So I'm gonna take a look back here, see if we can't find out exactly what happened to Jeffries on pit road. We know that he should have come in first, which he did, and we see him on pit road now. It looks like he ducks down, takes right side tires. They go down, takes left side tires, and yeah, I think everybody else ahead of him just took 2 tires. So I think that's exactly what it was. That shows you how many spots you can lose in the matter of 5 seconds on pit road there. Leaders all on 2 tires. Jeremy Jeffries opting to take 4 cost him a lot of position on the racetrack.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see if that's going to even out in terms of having, those left side tires. I'm assuming most of the drivers with the two tires strategy went with right sides, but we'll have to see if that evens out with him being able to charge his way back up to the field.
Well, it also makes me wonder if maybe he's setting up for the final pit stop too, rather than taking 4 tires and giving yourself that little bit more grip to the end. If maybe he's just going to go with 2 for the final stop, or even no tires. So maybe an early strategy call on the part of the 8.
Could definitely be. A lot of drivers at the super speedways will elect with going with either the two or no tire strategy, just based on the fact the tires don't really wear down as much at the super speedways. And at the same time, you don't run the risk of your pit crew making a mistake and costing you precious seconds of time on your pit stop, especially when it's under green flag conditions, because every second at this type of a track matters.
Well, and we've seen in the past a lot of, issues on pit road that result in really long pit stops taking upwards of, 19, 20, 25, sometimes even 30 seconds. Things that you wouldn't think would keep you in the pit road that long can happen. And with as competitive as this field is, I think I would rather take the gamble to fall back to 10th than I would, 20th or 30th place, because that's entirely feasible. You don't want to find yourself on the wrong end of that stick either.
Absolutely not. Believe these drivers have been given the one to green signal, and they will be able to get themselves back underway here. As I stated, these drivers are going to have to make at least one more pit stop before the conclusion of this race. And we'll see if it's going to be under green flag conditions, because we were closing in here on them, not or them having to make pit stops under green flag conditions. And obviously, that was about 3 or 4 laps prior to that they ended up having that wreck, having that caution.
And
Trying to
if
remember the last time. I think we did. Was it either last week or 2 weeks ago where we did see some green flag pit stops take place?
Yeah, it's entirely plausible at this point. When we come back to green, there's still going to be 36 laps to go. You figure 19 to 20 laps under green, so we'll probably see them in around, lap 47, lap 48, maybe even lap 49 if they can stretch it out a little bit, which will put them in perfect position for that last run. But again, it all depends. Will they stay under green, or will a couple more yellows come out between now and then? Because I think if a quick yellow comes out, you don't pit. But if another one comes out, maybe 10 laps from now, then that would throw that strategy out the window anyway.
Absolutely. So as we get ready to set them up and go green yet again, this could end up being one of those Talladega races where we end up having it come down to that final pit stop. Could be the money stop, or do you think that we're possibly going to see another couple of cautions come out and all the fuel strategy kind of go out the window?
I think it really depends on the aggression level out on the racetrack. We saw a couple really strong bump drafts on the race and the restart there. If they do that in the middle part of the race when they're really tight, that could lead to catastrophe then. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's see how those first 4 or 5 laps of this restart play out. I think we'll get a pretty good indicator of it from then.
Well, Grant Wesley up there on the top side with Jessica Shelton behind him.
Oh, we got trouble. Whoa, big trouble.
Oh, there we go. Oh, one car airborne. That's Bobby Farrell. And it's again in the tri-oval as Doug Woolley's collected Jeremy Jeffries. This is going to be a big one.
A lot of cars. You got at least 15 cars involved in that. like you mentioned, Jeremy Jeffries. I see Bob Seminara limping out of it. I saw Bobby Farrell, the underside of his race car, up in the air. I see, man, that's a lot of cars. It looks like Robbie Nice is involved. Donnie Garrett in the 77. And this wreck happened before those two cars even got together. It started with a car coming down to the 24 of Despirito. Not sure if it was a bump draft gone a foul or exactly what happened, but there's your answer. There's that yellow flag you were asking about.
Sonny Tallman, Manny D, amongst some others that were collected up in that. Chris Emery, who we saw go flying through the air under the last caution, he was involved in this one as well. A lot of drivers sliding through the grass. And yeah, we'll go back and we'll first look at that incident you were talking about prior to that wreck between Jeremy Jeffries and Bobby Farrell. And I'm almost wondering, was this wreck that we saw between the 8 and the 45 maybe a reactionary wreck to what was happening ahead of them?
Yes, it absolutely was because I'm not sure. It looks like the 24 of Despirito. I'm not sure if he bumper grabbed the 13 in front of him, which I believe he did. He comes down the track, runs into the 10 of Bumby directly in front of the 8 car, checks up hard and gets hit by the 143. And, you see Doug Woolley come spinning back up across the track, and the track is just completely blocked at that point. There's nowhere for anybody coming into the wreck to go. There's so much smoke. Unless you've got the smoke turned off in your options, that's really hard. That's a really hard thing to come through. There was just nowhere for anybody to go. And again, easily 15 cars involved in this massive pileup here in the Tri-Oval at Talladega.
Yeah, it almost looked like maybe the bumpers of the 17 of Chuck Mcclure and the 13 of Dave Melson was what kind of led to that checkup on the top side. And wow, there's some hard shots taken in that one. Holy cow, just a 712 of Bob Seminara just barely be able to snake his way through. Talk about the seas parting.
Yeah, and this is the second big sort of crash that we've seen here. It's very rare that you have crashes this big. I mean, big ones do happen at Talladega, but these guys do this so often. I don't think we've really seen crashes of tonight's magnitude all season long leading up to this race. And these are just really, really big ones that are happening at really bad spots on the racetrack. So this is definitely going to thin the herd down a little bit. We're only going to have a handful of cars that are going to be able to compete for the lead now, I think, as we move forward here, Seth.
Like you said, with it being in that unfortunate area of the racetrack going into the trial where our last two wrecks are, I think that leads to the reason why these wrecks have been so big, because it's so difficult to avoid. I mean, we've seen, wrecks take place on the back straightaway. Drivers have been able to make it be possibly only a solo car spin, maybe a two-car incident, but it's just so difficult, especially with the fact that they were 3 wide all the way through the field from about 7th place on back here on this restart, to be able to pick a line and possibly get through it without any contact or any damage.
Yeah, it was kind of the perfect storm brewing there, and unfortunately it did. And again, I don't think there's anybody really to blame for that wreck. That's just really hard racing, guys trying to be fast on the restart of that race. A couple really good bump drafts, and one of them just kind of went the wrong way, and it took out a lot of cars. It looks like there's still a lot running. I don't think it took out every car that was involved in the wreck, but there was a lot of cars that got damaged because of it. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just a product of super speedway racing. I mean, everybody's flat out. When the driver up ahead lifts with some issue like we saw right there with the 17, the 13, the 24, that car 7th, 8th in line back there is not going to be getting that message quickly enough, and we end up seeing the end result of what happened over there in the tri-oval. Is now Josh Metallic, who was able to wrestle the race lead away from Grant Wesley when that caution came out. He is going to be the race leader when we go back green. Looks like Wesley in the 88 actually did come to pit road as well. So it'll be Metallic, Tim Nofsker, Chuck Mcclure, Bernie Mobbs, and Terry Bombard, the top 5 when we go back green.
Yeah, I don't know. If I'm the rest of those cars from 4th to 10th, even farther back, I'm really concerned by those 3 cars that are running 1, 2, 3 right now. We've seen it consistently the last 2 weeks in a row now, Seth. The 39, the 088, 17 combination really, really, really fast. And it seems like when they get those 3 cars to the front, you don't see them fall much farther back than 5th or 6th place.
The drivers that came to pit road here under this caution: Wesley, Shelton, Melson, Richard Martin. Now, the reason that they did this they're thinking in terms of the long run. Everybody in the field still is going to have to make one more pit stop before the conclusion of this race. This caution did not come out when the fuel window opened to be able to make it the rest of the way, which is why you saw a number of drivers not willing to give up track position here at the front of the field to come down pit road. However, in the case of the 88, 94, 13, and others behind them, if we end up having that pit stop, and let's say it's under green flag conditions, they're not going to have to take on quite as much fuel, which means they won't have to spend nearly as much time on pit road.
Well, also take into consideration how we remember seeing that 88 glide his way to victory for his second win on the season about 4 weeks ago now. He knows how to save fuel. And if we get a couple more cautions, it's very possible that he might be able to stretch it. He's not going to be able to stretch it all the way to the end, uh, but he's going to be way closer to that window than anybody else is. And we know he's masterful at managing that.
The big gamble here, though, is, we've had 2 cautions here in close proximity, 2 big wrecks, and they've taken place up there, just inside maybe the tail end of the top 10 is where they've started. So, for those drivers that came to pit road, yes, they'd be at a little bit of an advantage, possibly fuel-wise, but they're also running the risk of being back there on this restart in the hornet's nest.
Yeah, and that really is the hornet's nest, especially, now that there's a clear divide in the field for a good number of cars that were involved in incidents and definitely got damaged. That's going to be a really, really uncertain area on the racetrack. While there are faster cars that might be stuck farther back in the pack working their way up there, you don't know how badly those guys' cars are damaged. They really don't know how badly they're damaged yet, or how much speed that they may scrub as a result of that.
Going to be going back green. You saw a couple of drivers going around, taking the lucky dog. Chris Emery in the 222. I believe this is going to put him on the lead lap, I think. Either that or -1. Got to wait until he crosses the line for that to update. Bob Seminara getting another lap as well. I believe he's now only -3 to the leader. So if he gets a couple more quick yellows, who knows? Stranger things have happened at Talladega. Also, 3 laps down is Cy Jones, and we do have another driver out of the race that I didn't update as well. We already talked about Stefan Martel out of the race. Also, Jeffrey Elliott, who we saw go up in the air on the front straightaway. He has brought his 56 into the garage area. So 2 drivers out of the race at this point.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, I just saw Robbie Nisus go spinning to the inside of the racetrack off turn 2. Not sure if he had to get checked up really hard there as he came up on the pack, or if somebody might have made contact with him, but I don't think he made contact with the inside wall, so he might be all right with just the damage that he had prior to that. But yep, they're all getting them lined up. I think with 2 big wrecks under your belt now, wrecks that were that massive and had the implications that they now do on the field, I think you start thinking about, okay, we're only halfway through this race now. Now we still got to get our car the rest of the way home. One more pit stop to go. I don't know how aggressive you want to be at this point. It's going to turn up soon, but I don't think it's going to be quite at this restart yet.
And we're also going to have to hope that during this run, we're going to get an idea of drivers that are up to speed and drivers that are not. While we've seen 2 big wrecks, some drivers have gotten through with minimal to no damage or relatively unscathed. Other drivers have sustained a lot of damage. So we're going to get an idea here of whose cars are aerodynamically sound and whose aren't.
Yeah, and if you see Jeff Crivello right now sitting in the 9th position in that 56, if you remember, the 056 landed on the deck lid of that car, so it's looking pretty strong right now there on the low side, as he's got Carson Krenz and Donnie Garrett right behind him. That high side, though, that 39, 17, 088 group, they're quick. Bernie Mobbs being towed right behind them, too, but we'll see if can Bumby and Glenn Harris make a move to the inside.
A lot of drivers up here in this lead group that if they went to victory lane here today, they would be pretty much locked into the playoffs. Josh Metallic, Chuck McClure, Bernie Mobbs, Mark Paglia all fit that scenario, along with the 6 of Wiley Coate.
Yeah, again, we've talked about it, these guys, the last few weeks now. They're getting more consistent. They're getting good when it counts, and this is when they need it to count. A bad finish at this point of the season, especially for a guy like Bumby, who, we've seen have a lot of struggles early on in the season. If he has another bad night tonight, he's just about out of the equation entirely.
Speak about out of the equation, Joe DeSpirito, I don't know if he ended up taking the claim for that wreck or if he just came down pit road coming to 1 to green to top off the fuel tank. He almost was taken out of the equation here, at least for battling up towards the front, because I think he started behind the damaged machines. You see his car back at the very tail end. He was able to pick up the draft.
Contact at the front. The 88 and the 710 got together coming off turn 4. Sorry to cut you off there, Seth. Was also almost another major incident like the ones that we saw. Looks like everybody's going to get back into place there.
Manny D, I think, was involved in our second caution of the day, if I remember correctly. The first incident that we had in the trial that sent Chris Emery flying, as now they're all trying to work their way around the 10 of Terry Bombard and the 710 of Manny D, trying to pick which lane that they want there. It's around the 8th, 9th, 10th position.
And again, this is a little bit of the effect of that hornet's nest that we talked about just a moment ago. There's a lot of cars that might have a little bit of damage and aren't quite as quick as they might hope to be. That really hurts your runs. When you have a car that's one way most of the race, the first half of the race, and you start the second race at a huge disadvantage that you weren't expecting to be at, that can really throw things into chaos. And we see right now the 56 and 94 side by side. I think the 94, she's kept her car in pretty good shape so far today.
They saw both Crivello and Carson Krentz there on the inside line trying to pinch Shelton and Melson on that outside line up to the wall, trying to stop their forward momentum. I think they're trying to find a way in line as 95 ducking down there onto the apron, and he's slowing quite a bit. I don't know if this is dropping to the back or not, because that looks a little too slow for that.
Yeah, that's really slow, unless he was just afraid of maybe washing up from the apron onto the racetrack. Wonder if he might have broken an engine or something like that, but I don't see him having come back up to speed yet. Way off the pace, but I think we're seeing one big giant line here, and that's going to be a byproduct of, so many cars being damaged, some cars coming from the back without damage, and everybody just trying to figure out exactly where everybody sits now at this juncture of the race.
There's the 24 of Joe DeSpirito. Looks like that car is up to speed. He drafted up nicely to the back of Sonny Talma, but right now running in the 27th position, and he was actually up inside of the top 20 just moments ago. So I'm not sure why he's fallen back there again. And this is kind of a unique strategy to see out of Joe DeSpirito, because we normally see him, if not up at the front, making a charge to the front.
Well, and I don't think it's just exclusive to Joe DeSpirito either. How many times this season, Seth, have we seen this many cars get single file? Look, there's so many cars running that middle line right now. Nobody really trying to make a move. Jeff Crivello's still stuck on the inside with the 103 of Krenz, but everybody else just running that middle line. Nobody trying to make a move or do anything right now, which, probably the calmest and most strange thing. We've seen everything so far this season, Seth.
That is 20 cars right now by my count that are running single file at this current point in time. And also, just to mention as well, people wondering when that final pit stop for these drivers might come about, we're looking somewhere in the vicinity of about 53 to 54 is when these drivers would have to make that final pit stop. A couple of drivers that came down, topped off the fuel tank, might be able to make it a couple laps past that, but I would say maybe about lap 56 is the furthest these drivers can go, which is setting these guys up potentially for a 10-lap shootout after that pit stop.
Oh, we got a car into the grass. Another car sideways in the tri-oval. I think everybody manages to miss it.
Is that the 26 maybe? Billy Ellis are off the pace.
I believe it is the 26 of Ellis. He's going to fall to the tail end of the line. Man, he's going to lose a lot of speed. Hopefully he can get back caught up with that draft, but everybody, that middle line, entirely single file. But do you think there's any coincidence that that's the case with as many cars as we know are damaged on the track and the top 3 of whom we know are super fast and not damaged?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think right now, with what we saw out of these 3 last week, and they kind of got broken up, if I remember correctly, due to a caution that came out with maybe about 20 to go.
Big blink out of the 17.
Yeah, that's scary. I think Metallic.
Big blink out of the 17.
And he's dropping. Oh, boy. I was just going to say, circumstances last week broke these 3 up when Metallic came down pit road after a caution came out and the 3 got separated. Well, now they get broken up here because Mcclure is having some internet issues.
Yeah, you see, he's still twitching a little bit going down the back straightaway. Seth, this changes a lot. This changes quite a bit. We know how fast, Josh and Tim are just by themselves, but I think they're so much faster when they have Chuck with them right now. And I think you've got a car in the number 3 spot in the number 90 of Bernie Mobbs, who's a hungry driver right now. if he gets a chance to get by those guys, I don't see why him, Pagley in the 28 and Wiley wouldn't take it. And again, that just brings into call there with McClure falling out like that. Look at those cars running third, fourth, and fifth. You know, the drivers that we've been talking about, hey, these guys have to get good points finishes, and that's exactly what they're doing right now.
Well, I mean, and if you think about it too, you know, Bernie Mobbs right now is the only representative of the Florida boys up here inside of the top 5. We've already documented Bob Seminara had his pedal problems in
Oh,
the early
trouble,
stages.
trouble.
Oh, wow, that's Carson Krentz going around towards the inside wall.
Carson Krenz hard was airborne when the bottom of the front end impacted the inside wall. Looked like there may have been 4, maybe 5 cars involved in that.
Wayne Pribnow in the 00, Jay Crivello in the 56, who I believe has already taken his car to the garage, and no caution came out for that one, Zach.
No caution. Wow, that's really surprising to see. Doug Woolley involved, the 56 Crivello, the 00 of Pribnow. Krenz hard into the wall. I don't know if you guys got time to take a look at the replay, but they spun down in front of a pack of about 8 to 10 cars behind them. Really impressive that nobody else was involved in that, but that's definitely going to hurt the 103.
Yeah, we'll quickly jump back and take a look at this one. I'm actually really surprised. There's sometimes if a spin takes place just around that yellow line that a caution will not fly. Sometimes it will. It all kind of depends on the situation, and we'll see what happens here as you were describing it here with Carson Krentz. Watch the 99. Oh, yeah, just the tiniest little bit of bumper grab there through the center of the corner, and I'm actually shocked that 03 did not go up into the air because he had his right side tires completely off the ground in that slide.
Yeah, he did a little bit, but make no mistake, big impact to that inside wall. He was going pretty quick. That's probably not going to bode well. Not only did he lose this entire pack as we are still under green, but that's going to be a lot of damage for them to repair. Seth, the entire field now is single file as we work lap 47 down the backstretch here at Talladega.
We just need Josh Metallic to change his number to the 88 and have them all run up against the wall to make it pretty much like how NASCAR was back between the 2007 to 2012 seasons. But Metallic out in front showing the way in this race, and I have to wonder as well, at a super speedway, you want to be out in front in terms of leading laps, getting bonus points, but you don't want to be out in front in terms of saving fuel. So the 39 right now at a little bit of a disadvantage with that green flag pit stop possibly looming on the horizon.
Yeah, speaking of which, Seth, we've had so much happen here. They're quickly encroaching on those green flag pit stops again. I think, this might worry Josh a little bit because you might be cutting it really close on fuel here. But at the same time, I think with 19 to 20 laps of fuel in your car, there's 20 to go right now. He still could be okay, but will that still be the case if he's leading the rest of the race?
Yeah, we had him stack up back here as well with Ron Larkin Jr., Dave Melson, and others. I don't know what caused them to go 3 wide, but they were 3 abreast for a brief moment. They've settled it back out to 2 wide as Dave Melson, Jeremy Jeffries on that top side saying, come on, guys, we don't want to run single file. Let's formulate a couple of lines here. Larkin Jr. is going to run up there with him.
Yeah, and that 73 car, man, he's quick and he's experienced enough to be able to make some moves. If they can get another car or 2 on that outside line, I wouldn't be surprised to see them make up another 4 or 5 positions on the racetrack. But with just the 4 of them up there right now, I don't think it's going to be enough. They're not going to be able to make enough speed.
Good news for Chuck Mcclure. His connection issues have settled out. Bad news, he was second at the time when it happened. He's now back in the 18th spot, and now we're starting to get racy from around the 12th position on back.
Yep, you see them. They're all starting to get 3 wide a little bit more as you see that there's only one group now 3 wide at the very back. Those cars still work in the high side, still trying to make some moves, but it's getting real tight as you see Melson come across the nose of Willie. Luckily, Willie let him in there. But the top 3 or 4 cars now, they're checking out as those cars behind them are getting a little bit more racy, and there's a lot of damaged cars in there as well. Those top 3 are loving the fact that those guys are racing as hard as they are back there coming up on green flag stops.
And that's why these guys are racing as hard as they are, because 1 or 2 positions you pick up on the racetrack could translate to another 2 or 3 spots that you pick up after your green flag pit stop is concluded.
Krenz, real slow on the low side.
Oh, where do they go? Jeremy Jeffries, nowhere to go.
Big crash.
8 car up in the air and now barrel rolling down into the tri-oval. Shelton's involved. Dave Melson's involved, and they're still wrecking further back there. That's Bob
Huge
Dixon
crash.
in the 143. I think that was Mullins in the 38. And again, third incident today in one of the toughest parts of this super speedway heading into the tri-oval.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a result of a lap car there that was pretty far off the pace, and the guys coming up on him were racing. There was nowhere you saw they even tried to do something to not hit him, and there was no racetrack that they could claim to get around him at all. The speed differential was just too much. I think that car either needed to be in the extreme high line or down, below the apron, and big big incident here.
Yeah,
Third,
usually the driver etiquette, as you said, is to be in that outside line. Even if they're racing three wide behind you, that third line will then get down to the second groove to make their way around you. Very rarely do you see drivers that are up to speed liking to see a slower machine on that inside line force them to make their way around the high side.
yeah, and there was just a tremendous closing rate. The 77 just barely gets by him, but the 8 of Jeffries with cars stacked up, above him, just nowhere to go with that closing rate. And man, that crash, I would say that happened about sixth place, and just took out a tremendous amount of really fast cars there. So that's really unfortunate.
And Jeremy Jeffries was, you said, pinned in behind Carson Krentz. He had Manny D to his outside, so nowhere for him to be able to go. Shelton getting involved. She got up into the outside wall along with Dave Melson. And then I'm not really sure what the contact was back there between Mullins and Dixon that caused them to spin around, but we had a wreck after the wreck.
Yeah, and there was a 20 mile per hour speed differential there. It looked like Krenz might have bounced off the yellow line, so I don't know if maybe he did make an effort to get it down there and then just kind of washed back up. But yeah, he was down on the apron, and just he comes right up out of that bottom line even. And you see the 94 Shelton involved, the 13 of Melson, the 45 Bobby Farrell, the 710 Manny D, the 55. And that 8 car had to have flipped over at least 12 times from the time he started to the time he ended up in the infield there. So man, that really changes the face of the race now. That's really going to change the way this thing plays out. We got 20 laps to go right now. This is going to set everybody up to be able to make it to the end on fuel, but a lot of fast cars not contending anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, Jeremy Jeffries at this point in time has not retired out of the race, trying to get that car repaired as best he can. The reason being, we still have more than 10 laps to go in this race, so there is still the potentiality more drivers could drop out before the conclusion, and he needs every point he can get to get himself up into the top 20, so his win from last week can count towards a spot in the playoffs. This is going to get Bob Seminara back to, I believe, one lap down, as I think he was one of the free pass cars here under this yellow. But yeah, I mean, you've got Jessica Shelton and Dave Melson who've been run up inside the top 10 all day. They were collected up in this one as well. And just going back to the Carson Krentz incident, you mentioned 20 miles per hour off the pace. He had nosed it into the inside wall at nearly full speed. So we knew that car was not going to be up to speed. I'm just really confused about his choice of running the inside line there to let the leaders by, especially with the fact that they had gotten themselves back doubled up. And we know the preferred lines are the middle and that inside line.
Well, and in his defense, so not to feel as though he's being piled onto. Like I said, I think he did try to get it down onto the apron, but it looked like the car just kind of washed back up into that line, and maybe he just couldn't hold it down there at speed. Just a really bad spot for that to happen. And I think if the leaders were only 2 wide, it would have been okay. But there was cars going 3 wide, trying to take advantage of the fact that there was a car that they were trying to use on the inside, and I think that might have contributed to the magnitude of the incident just a little bit as well. Again, I think if they were just 2x2, they might have been able to make it by him. But at the exit of that corner, when they were, 3 wide, there was no way. There was no way.
Well, Josh Metallic is going to be leading us back to green. He is next week going to be going into a 1-season winless streak. It was race 9 of season 50 that he went to victory lane. So obviously he would love to be able to end that winless streak one race early here as he's looking for his first win of the season. He's been strong, been out in front here, leading a good majority of this race. Up to this point, looks like he led 19 laps of this event, but he's got Tim Nofsker right behind him, Grant Wesley right behind him. Those are two drivers that have already been to victory lane. Then you've got Bernie Mobbs and Donnie Garrett, a couple of drivers that are currently running outside of the top 10 in the point standings that would love to get their first win of the season.
Yep. We know that Josh is more than capable. He's really good at these super speedways. But, if you're him, you're also thinking about, okay, the 088's right behind me. Does he point his way into the playoffs, and kind of does that nudge me out? Am I good enough on points alone without a win? So he's hungry. He wants that little bit of insurance, to be able to carry into the playoffs without having to worry about getting knocked out in the last race potentially. You hate to see that for the 8 of Jeffries, though, because as we talked about earlier, with a couple solid finishes, he could have found himself, back up into the top 20 in points. But this big wreck here tonight, that's going to set him way back. He's going to have a lot of work to do these last couple weeks here with 2 more races to go after this one before the playoffs.
Came into this race, I believe, officially 39 points behind 20th in the standings, which coming into this race was held by Terry Bombard. You saw our 2 lucky dogs go around. Bob Seminara now only -1 to the leader, so he's hoping for a quickie yellow here so that he'd have a shot to pick up spots on the lead lap in the closing stage of this race. Cy Jones also getting the free pass. He is now 2 laps down to the race leaders. Jerm Lewis in the 616, currently 3 laps down. And just to update, Carson Krentz in the 03, he has taken his car back to the garage area, joining Jay Crivello. John Fajoin has actually taken his car back behind the wall. And then also out of the race, the cars of Jeffrey Elliott and Stefan Martel.
Yeah, we've dwindled this field down a little bit from the 36 cars that we had start this race. So now you have to start to wonder, of those cars that are in the top 10, where do the damaged cars start? And how much of a difference does that play? We know the 88, the 088, the 39, and I believe the 90 has steered clear of incidents so far tonight as well. So those cars being as quick as they are, do they make a big difference at the front of the field? Can they stay there? And do they continue to lead and be as dominant as they have? Because it's going to be harder the farther and farther back you get with damaged cars to start making those moves.
Well, those damaged cars as well could be really good with pushing you to the front, but when they get out there in that clean air, the aerodynamic unsoundness kicks in and slows up whatever line they're leading. So, some of those guys back there that have gotten some bumps and scrapes from some of the incidents we've had here today, but still running somewhat up to speed, they could be the X factor in this one if they're able to get up to one of these faster machines and maybe push them to victory. As the green flag back in the air, these drivers now, they're basically racing to the finish. They're good to make it on fuel the rest of the way.
Yep, 13 laps to go. You see the 088 Novska real quick on that top side. Actually breaks away from that 90 car. That's not going to be good coming off that second corner. That's going to be a good speed differential that might actually hurt them. But the 39 and 88 looks like they slide up the track. Garrett and Novsker side banging there, trying to, maintain who's going to be able to follow that 88.
Well, Novsker, when he was able to move up, Grant Wesley and Josh Metallic cleared him and then moved up as well. And I think Donnie Garrett was saying, hey, man, where's my spot in line in that middle groove? And I think that's why we saw that little bit of contact between the two of them down the back straight. It was now Garrett trying to lead the inside line with Ron Larkin Jr. in the 73. I believe that's also trying to make out who that is behind him. I think that's Chuck Mcclure in the 17, who's finally been able to make his way back up here into the top 10.
Yeah, there's fast cars on that bottom line. I think if you're Donnie Garrett, you're pretty confident in the fact that you've got Ron Jr., Chuck Mcclure, Terry Bombard, all those guys behind you. We know that they can make speed and they're really good, but do they have enough cars to make it up to that top line? Because right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars have broken away before the first double file. And again, the 39, 88, 088, the three really fast cars with Bernie Mobbs and Mark Paglia trailing them right behind.
Had a near heart-stopping moment there out of turn 2 as Ron Larkin Jr. and Joe DeSpirito nearly made some contact there with Larkin pushing up. Oh man, now trying to look to the inside of Donnie Garrett as Garrett moves up into that middle line. And how about Bobby Farrell there in the 45? We talked to him pre-race. One of the few times he's actually being able to race from green flag to checkered flag, and a solid outing for him right now in that 7th spot.
Yeah, and we got drivers slicing and dicing, drivers just trying to make something happen at this point. We see again the first 7 or 8 cars now broken away. So these cars back behind him getting double file. They're getting antsy. They don't want those guys to get too far out ahead of them, but at the same time, they want to be able to set themselves up to get to the position on the racetrack that they're most comfortable running. As we see Garrett and Shelton now on that top side with Mcclure behind them.
John Godfrey now going to jump up there as well. We have to wait for that second group to catch back up before we see which lanes they decide to take. And I know we keep saying this every week, but it is really prevalent in terms of the finish of this event. These drivers, while they are racing to the checkered flag at the completion of lap 66, they also could be racing to the caution flag, which if it came out at the conclusion of lap 62, would end this race under yellow.
Yeah, and right now it looks like the leaders, Grant Wesley pushing really hard on the back of the 39, being pushed really hard by the 088, and in turn 90 and 28 as well. But Donnie Garrett, he's leading Jess Shelton, and they're doing okay on that slightly higher line. You see they bump Bobby Farrell down out of line just a little bit as they come up on the 24 of DeSpirito, but they're making time. They're making moves up there, and they're making their cars go forward. So it's going to be interesting to see with 9 laps to go if they can continue that progress or they tuck back in again.
And now it's going to be decision time. Well, as soon as I say that, Shelton and McClure jump down to the inside, leaving Donnie Garrett out to dry. I was going to say, if that outside line continues to move forward, it would be decision time for those drivers inside of the top 5, whether they'd want to jump up there with that second line or not. But, oh, look at Joe DeSpirito. He's going to look down to the inside of Mark Paglia for 5th place. And I'm not sure if he backed off or not. I think he did, thinking that was not going to work, so he'll tuck back in line.
And now Shelton being left out of the draft. Man, it's vicious, man. You get cars that are working together. You think you're moving forward, and next thing you know, you're just out of the draft and you're losing position. We saw that happen, just a moment ago with Garrett. It looks like it could potentially happen again now with Jess. So falling backwards here, Mcclure making a move back on the high side. It looked like he might have been stuck out there for just a moment, but now he's leading that top line. We'll see if he can make any ground as he's right on that right rear quarter panel of the 24 of the Spirit.
We've got Godfrey, Larkin, Woolley, Bobby Farrell, Donnie Garrett, Terry Bombard, Sonny Tallman all up there with him, but nothing doing. He'll tuck back in line behind Joe DeSpirito. McClure started this race from the 2nd position, had to fall to the back because of some connection problems and trying to fight his way back up there to the front, looking for his first win of the season, but it's still out in front. Josh Metallic in that 39, and you have to wonder what's going through his mind because he knows the guys behind him, they want to go to victory lane just as much as he does. When does he start looking in that rearview mirror for these drivers to make moves? Does he do it as soon as lap 62, or does he wait until that last lap?
I don't think he stopped looking in the mirror since the drop of the green flag, if I'm going to be honest with you, Seth. He knows how fast those cars behind him are, but he also knows in what a perilous position that he's in, needing to get a race win here as he works his way toward the playoffs. We know he's good on points, but he needs that win. He needs that insurance policy to know that he's going to be good to go. And he knows that those 88s behind him, they are no joke. If they want to make speed, if they want to make a move and they hook up and decide to do it, they're going to go. It's going to happen.
2 top 5s, 5 top 10s coming into tonight's race for Josh Metallic, but a 0 in the win column. The 2 drivers behind him have been to victory lane already this season. Wesley twice, Nofsker once. And then further back here, you've got Bernie Mobbs in the 90 car. You have to wonder about him and Mark Paglia. If we see the 88 and the 088 work together to make a move on the 39, then what do Mobbs, Paglia, DeSpirito, what do they do? Do they go with that run, or do they try and help the 39, or do they also maybe think about going 3 wide and try and take the lead for themselves?
I think you go 3 wide at that point because the 88 and 088 have just as much chance of making the same speed as you do by deciding that you want to cut that 39 3 wide. And if that 39's got no help, it's really all going to be dependent on where do the cars behind Paglia go? Because they're going to have too much of a run to really push Josh. They're going to have to choose Nofsker and Wesley or Paglia and Mobs. So this is going to be really interesting here coming to 5 to go.
You want to pick a dark horse out of this top 10? How about John Godfrey in that 7-Eleven machine right now in the 7th position, comes into this race 17th in the standings. If he were to go to victory lane tonight, he would be in a playoff spot.
Yeah, another driver that we've seen week after week after week be up there, but it just hasn't quite had the results at the end of the day. So if, anything could happen at this point, and with the way that the top 3 are really aggressively bump drafting, it's not inconceivable that we could see a little bit of mayhem here before the end of the race.
We'll jump up to the front momentarily here as we've entered into that point of no return where a yellow flag would end the race under caution, because back here from about 13th place on back, they are double and 3 wide, not given a lot of room here through the tri-oval. And so if this race ends under yellow, it may be back here where that caution is triggered.
Yeah, and these guys are just trying to race for points at this point. Every position on the track matters. Every position is a point. A couple cars off the pace way, way up high, but I don't think that's going to be an issue at this point. You see Jess Shelton on leading, trying to make a charge on that inside line, just no help as she's now side by side with the 10 of Bumby there back there. But these top 3, 4, 5 cars really, really quick now. Joe DeSpirito also, by the way, in 6th spot. Another guy that we know is really, really fast. Also,
Terry Bombard would have saved. Sorry to cut you off, but he nearly went around off the nose of Ron Larkin there in turns 3 and 4.
Near mayhem as they're back to 3 wide again. See, this is what I was talking about. Everybody going for every single point that you can. Moves not being made at the front, so guys trying to manufacture and make things happen from the middle of the pack.
Bob Seminara got trapped multiple laps down early on in this race. You see him there on that inside line, the 7-12, still -1. The good news is he's going to pick up a couple of spots here tonight. Looks like he'll be finishing in the 29th position, but on the flip side, he's going to lose quite a number of points to Joe DeSpirito for the overall points lead, as they're going to be coming to 2 laps to go. We've settled it back out to single file, just about back to the 20th position again.
Yeah, and I think coming to the straight... Oh, and there's the move right there. There's Grant Wesley to the low side, but no help. Nobody goes to the bottom with Grant Wesley. He's going to be stuck down there by himself as the 088 works his way to the rear end of Josh Metallic. 2 to go at the line. Everybody getting super racy now behind them.
Nofsker was peeking there as well about maybe going to the outside on Josh Metallic, heading to the start-finish line. Bernie Mobbs didn't look like he was willing to make that move, so Nofsker tucks back in line. Here comes Mark Paglia. He looks high, and now the inside line trying to form. Wesley has friends down there in Woolley, Garrett, and McClure, but I don't think that's enough numbers just yet. Here comes Nofsker.
Nofsker to the inside. Josh throws almost the exact same block as he did last week, but Nofsker with the advantage through 3 and 4. No help for the 39, stuck on the outside line. That moves Mobbs up to 2nd behind Nofsker, with Paglia and DeSpirito running now 4th and 5th. Josh Metallic losing a ton of time. No help to be found coming to the white flag.
Donnie Garrett was down the apron.
Trouble!
Almost came up. Oh, did they make it to the white flag is the question. Did the caution come out before they hit the stripe?
I don't believe it did. I don't believe it did. These guys are still racing to the finish. Bernie Mobbs now behind the 088 of Nofsker. Paglia is going to have a real strong run to the high side, but DeSpirito does not go with him. Paglia now to the outside of Mobbs, trying to work his way forward. We got trouble.
Mobbs. That's going to take out a lot of cars there. DeSpirito looking high on Nofsker, who throws a block. Wesley's back in the picture again.
Grant Wesley going to the rear end of Nofsker, out of turn 4 right now. What happens at the tri-oval? DeSpirito's going to have a good run. The leaders
Wesley
almost make
there.
contact. Almost make contact. Looks like it's going to be Nofsker at the line.
Tim Nofsker with some tremendous blocks on that final lap is going to hold off Grant Wesley and Joe DeSpirito as a melee on the back straightaway. Drivers scrambling left and right to get positions after contact between Mobbs and Paglia. And fortunately, they did, as you said, make it back to the start-finish line before the caution flew for that incident over exiting the tri-oval for us to finish this race technically under green, or at least up to speed.
And we were able to make it to the checkered flag. What a race back between those 4 drivers. Paglia, I'm not sure what started the incident between Mobbs and Paglia, but currently being shown scored fourth at the line, I believe, unofficially. No, I'm showing Tim Nofsker actually in first with Paglia in second. I'm not sure. I'm currently showing Grant Wesley one lap down.
I'm hearing right now that apparently, based on the timing of when the yellow came out, about half the field was across the start finish line and the other half were behind the start finish line. And so some drivers, according to the game, had actually taken the caution, others were still racing back. And so there's a bit of a glitch going on with the running order.
All right, so I believe we're actually going to have to go back to the replay to determine exactly who the top three were here.
Going to be somewhat difficult, at least with the running order that we're going to show you guys to tell who is finished in what position. We'll probably have to like use the visual of crossing the start finish line of who was where, because I've just heard from the race admins that only the leader was across the stripe when the caution came out. Everybody else behind got black flagged for racing back to the checkered flag. They were, according to the game, supposed to line up behind the pace car. So that's why Wesley was currently put a lap down, because he got the black flag, as did drivers like Despirito, Bombard, Godfrey. All that will have to be obviously settled out later on when the points are put together. But we'll do our best to try and figure out who is where here in these finishing results.
Well, Seth, I can confirm to you our top three at the line: Nofsker bringing home the victory, followed by the 88 of Grant Wesley. Looks like the 24 of Joe Despirito gonna round out the top three. Again, this is the results at the line. I believe in fourth place. We're gonna have to look back again through the replay to see exactly where these leaders were at the time of the checkered flag coming out. But again, I can confirm Nofsker, Grant Wesley, and the 24 of Joe Despirito rounding out your top three for tonight.
So right there, what happened to the driver at the start finish line that went airborne was Chuck Mcclure. The contact between Bernie Mobbs and Mark Paglia kind of looked like Mobbs wanted to make a move to the outside. Paglia was there. Billy Elliser in the 26 gets a piece. We'll go back and see where his contact came from. Still trying to figure out the running order here. Looks like Billy Elliser. I don't know if he had any contact or not, if he just dove down to the inside to avoid and hit the inside wall as a result. Yeah, he almost ran over Bobby Farrell, nosed it into the inside wall, trying not to hit the back of the 45, and then almost slid into Bernie Mobbs, who had just gathered his race car back up.
Yeah, just a melee of guys running, trying to get the best finishes that they can at the line. Unofficially, without the incident, it looks like Mark Paglia going to finish fourth. Not sure if there's going to be a penalty assessed for an incident or not. Josh Metallic comes across the line in fifth place, and the 7-Eleven of John Godfrey in sixth. So again, that's going to be at least your top five. So we've got that confirmation via replay directly. What a crazy finish, Seth. We saw some really big wrecks tonight. And again, it looks like that would determine what the outcome of tonight's race is as well.
And here tonight, I think maybe the biggest role we've seen played by that tri-oval. At least four of the wrecks that we had, four of the cautions, including the last one there, exiting out of the tri-oval with the contact between Chuck Mcclure and Donnie Garrett. I mean, we see wrecks take place in the tri-oval, but not quite as frequent as we saw here tonight. And as you said, some pretty big wrecks as well. The second and third caution, especially.
Yeah, boy, they wrecked up some cars tonight. But again, that's that intensity level that we talked about at the beginning of tonight's race. You know, after tonight, only two more races remaining before those playoffs. So points were meaning a lot. And we saw a lot of guys were completely strung out single file. So when everybody decided to make those moves there with two to go and coming down to the white flag, it was just everybody was so tight. Everybody wanted to go to the same spot all at once. And That was exactly what happened. That's why we saw what we did tonight.
Well,
Crazy race.
Tim Knopfsker came into this race 54 points back, so this second win certainly going to help him in his quest to get up inside the top 20. Not only that, but if he gets up into the top 20 in the points, this win gives him some added bonus points when the playoffs are put together.
Yeah, and I think we'll see with tonight's win. That is probably very likely going to put him into the top 20. If it's not into the top 20, I would say probably somewhere between, no lower than maybe 24th. So with another solid run in the last couple races, I think that we got a pretty good shot of seeing that 088 go into the playoffs with easily a couple wins to this point under his belt.
Well, our top three finishers, we're going to get some interviews with them, and so close again for Joe DeSpirito to try and find victory lane, the defending champion, but still finds himself with a 0 in the win column despite being the current points leader. And let's see if we can get a word with him now. Hey, Joe, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Hey, man, what's going on? I got you.
Man, a crazy last lap there. We were kind of wondering, are you guys racing back to the checkers? Are you guys under caution? We saw that obviously the race leader had actually crossed the line, so you guys were racing back, and it came down between you, Knopfsker, and Wesley. But being that third car in line, I mean, what was there you could have possibly done to get around the two of them, or did you have to basically commit to pushing one of them to the checkers?
Oh man, we were all over the place there. There's a lot of blocking and inside, outside, and I didn't want to wreck anybody there. And um, yeah, wreck happened on the backstretch there, but I hit Bernie square, and it looked like two cars touched up there and spun. It was really hard to figure out where to go at the end there. But yeah, we don't know if that's going to be the official standings. I think it's unofficial right now. They're going to fix it all. The yellow came out right as we hit the checkered flag there. So, um, but it was a crazy last lap if that's the race that we're going to be using. If that's the lap we're going to be using.
You know, we also saw, Joe, you drop to the back of the pack around the midway portion of this race. Very unusual to actually see you have to work your way through the field back up to the front. You're usually up there all race long. How difficult was it being able to make your way through traffic to get yourself back up there? Because it was a pretty good comeback. We saw you up in sixth in about 10 laps time.
Yeah, it was pretty difficult. Seemed like everybody was single file in the second lane for a while. I couldn't make a run in the third lane. Nobody wanted to go in the third lane, so I had to ride around for a while. And luckily, having the first pit stall and a wreck that happened, I made a made up a bunch of positions sneaking through the caution there, and having the first pit stall on pit road gained me a bunch of spots there too, and I wound up coming out. And on the restart, I think I was eighth, so it worked out. That pole position helps sometimes.
Hey, Joe, it's Zach. Good third place finish tonight. Real strong showing for you. Again, I believe you've only got one finish outside of the top five and nothing outside of the top 10 so far this season. But, what I really want to ask you about is we saw the entire field get strung out. Probably the longest line of single file that I've seen in a long, long time on a super speedway here at RTG. Um, were you expecting guys to start trying to make moves a little bit sooner than what they were? Or did you kind of feel like that's how that was going to be with long single file run like that until there was only about 2 laps to go?
No, it was a weird race, man. It seemed like nobody, we've been aggressive the last 3 or 4 weeks, and today it just kind of seemed like people were just staying in that second line there. And yeah, it was hard to figure out for a while. Like I said, very weird, but worked out in the end, and it was exciting at the end there. But yeah, kind of a different race compared to prior weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. A lot of really good hard racing, but a lot of really, really big wrecks that we saw as well. Now, I did mention you've only got one finish outside the top five so far this season. Bob, unfortunately, finishing a lap down. That's going to pull you to a pretty comfortable point margin. But we've seen the trio of the 088, 39, and the 17 be really, really fast up front. When you don't have your team together in the Florida boys, what do you think that it's going to do to beat those cars, and how fast, how good are they really on the racetrack that a lot of people may not realize?
Yeah, there's some great competition out there. Yeah, 39 Josh, 088 Tim, and 17 Chuck. Those are three of some of the best guys out there. Um, you're always watching to see where they are on the track and who's going with them and what type of fuel strategy they're doing. It's always tough to beat them. So yeah, it's something that I've had to deal with since I started at RTG. Those guys are the best of the best, and we're talking about them on Whisper and who went in the pit and what kind of strategy they're doing, and yeah, like I said, they're tough to beat, man. Best of the best. They've been around a long time.
All right, Joe. It's really good to talk to you, man. Congratulations on your third place finish. I know we're gonna see you in victory lane by the end of the season. You've just run way too quick and way too good not to. Who are some people you'd like to give a shout out to and you'd like to thank here before you take off?
Yeah. I want to apologize about the paint scheme tonight. I had the Hollow Dega paint scheme in there. It wasn't uploaded tonight, but that's going to be running in 2 weeks on Saturday. So you guys kind of saw generic car, but I want to thank you guys for putting on a good show every week. Flatout Racing, RTG. I thank my boys, APW Racing, Bernie Mobs, Bob Seminara, and I want to dedicate this race to my girlfriend's grandmother. She passed away today, so I ran this race for her. So yeah, thanks guys.
Last Joe DeSpirito unofficially has him scored in the third position here tonight at Talladega. Great run for you, Joe, and look forward to seeing you next week as we're getting ready to close down this regular season.
Cool. Thanks guys. Thanks again.
Let's see if we can now get our unofficial second place finisher, Grant Wesley. Hey, Grant, it's Seth and Zach up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Hey guys, what's going on?
Well, man, I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Espirito there. A crazy last lap, and it kind of came down to the three of you guys there through 3 and 4. You had a car that looked like it could make a move there for the win. We saw you move high, we saw you move low, but was there a thought in the back of your mind of, if I make this move, does the 24 go with me or leave me out to dry?
Yeah, man, that was a crazy last lap for sure. I mean, when the caution fell, I think there was like 6 or 7 of us that thought we were in front of the line, and we were racing back. So I mean, at that point, you don't just debate if you're racing back or not. You're either going to do it or you're not. So we were racing back, and we got got down the back stretch, and couple of them got together in front of me, and so that worked out good. And me and Joe and Tim were on the bottom, and I gave Joe a big push into 3, and he took that momentum, and he was going to go to the high side. And then I kind of know Tim, he's aggressive, and I figured he'd probably go up the hill, and I was going to try to take advantage of that situation and make something happen on the bottom, and that's exactly what happened. And I just didn't have enough momentum on the bottom off of turn 4, and yeah, Tim came back down the hill, and Tim did what he should have done. He's racing for the win. It's off turn 4. I mean, I don't blame him for blocking. But yeah, congrats to him on the win.
I was saying to Zach here that, this season, I can't remember the front straightaway, that tri-oval area coming as much into play in one of these Talladega races as it did here tonight. We saw at least 4 of the cautions here this evening take place with incidents in that portion of the racetrack. What do you think it was here tonight that drivers were struggling with going into that particular area of the track?
Well, tonight's race had a different attitude for sure. I mean, one factor, we had 36 cars tonight, and anytime you have that many cars on the track, I mean, I know they're all really great drivers, but eventually there's going to be checkups, and you're going to have some contact. And it just seems like the tri-oval, it seems like that's the most likely place for that to happen. Um, and like I said, the race just kind of had a different attitude altogether. I know they're about halfway. We had a lot of single file, and it seemed like the whole field must have been single file because we were doing 200 coming off the corner and checking up to 193 at the end of the straightaway, just because of the checkups. So I just think that kind of contributed.
Hey Grant, it's Zach. Good, really strong second place showing tonight there. Good job racing the end there through all the chaos that was trying to figure out where everybody was supposed to be and who was actually racing back. I don't even blame you. I think if the leader And if I saw the leader racing back and I was still racing back, I would have done the exact same thing that you guys did. And I think you made the right decision there. You've missed a couple races this season. You came into tonight sixth in points, right behind Jess Shelton. Strong second place, showing that's going to be showing you pretty well into the playoffs. Are you still now you starting to get more into a playoff mode mentally, or are you just trying to get as many more wins as you can before that comes into play?
Yeah, I'd say yes to both of those. I would love to have won the preseason points, to get those bonus points going into the playoffs, but that's not really a possibility missing those races. So, yeah, I'm just trying to get some wins to get those bonus points. And every race, I always go out with the same mentality, same strategy. I want to stay up front and I want to win the race. And yeah, I'm definitely trying to build some consistency going into the chase.
All right, and I think you've got yourself in a great position to do so moving forward. Is there anybody that you would like to give a shout out to or give a thanks to before we send you on your way?
Yeah, thanks to all the owners here at RTG, David Cannon, Terry Bauman, Sean Prime. We have such a great place to race and such a great group of guys to race with. Thanks to the admins tonight, Josh and Wiley and Tim. And I'm going to continue to give a special thanks to Donnie Garrett for putting together that fantasy racing league. It's a lot of fun to kind of pick some drivers and then go out and race with them. Shout out to my team XFM, my girlfriend, and my mom and dad, my family members watching, and you guys for the broadcast. Thanks.
That's Grant Wesley. He brings it home second place here tonight, and as Zach alluded to, keeps himself up there in the standings, already locked into the playoffs. So hopefully he can carry this momentum into the final two races of the regular season there, Grant. Maybe we'll see you in victory lane for a third time before then.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And let's go down to victory lane, where for the second time in 3 weeks, Tim Nofsker is celebrating. Hey, Tim, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yeah, how you doing, guys?
Well, we just said, 3 weeks, 2 trips to victory lane, and in both of your trips to victory lane, you had to put on some pretty intense blocks on the final lap in order to be able to bring that 088 home in the first position. Here tonight, a lot of chaos behind you, and it came down between you and 2 other drivers. So did it make the job a little bit easier in terms of being able to block the runs?
There was so much confusion coming to that last lap. I wasn't sure if, we'd actually taken the caution given the timing of the wreck. And I just knew that I didn't want anybody to pass me at that point, just in case.
You got yourself to the front there after making the pass on Metallic over in turn 3, but a couple laps prior to that, we had seen Grant Wesley try to make the move and nobody went with him. So you knew you were going to make that move into turn 3, but was there a thought in the back of your mind of, I sure hope somebody goes with me to keep this momentum?
Yeah, I mean, it's a gamble. I really, even before that, it seemed like Bernie Mobbs and I got hooked up and we're running nose to tail a lot tonight. And he did a great job of pushing around and drafting tonight. So I got to thank Bernie. He dropped that whole O line down behind me, and that was the difference, really.
Hey, Tim, it's Zach. Congratulations on your win tonight, man. You're 2 for 3 so far on the season, batting .666, looking pretty comfortable in the point standings right now with 2 races left before the playoffs. We've heard over the last couple weeks the word block get used quite a bit. Do you feel as though that's a product of the amount of cars that we've had on the track, or do you feel that's more of a thing where guys are trying to get every position and every point that they can, with a little bit more urgency and focus on what the championship is, and with the playoffs looming just a couple weeks away?
First of all, I hate blocking. I hate doing it. I hate people doing it to me, but it's a product of what we do. You also have to know when to block. If it's lap 10, I'm not going to pull that move. If it's lap 65, sure, I've got to try to protect. But, blocking is just a product of what we do, and there's so many good racers out there. I mean, you've got to fight for every position.
I agree, and I couldn't agree more with your definition and how you feel about blocking. I believe you and I are exactly on the same level when it comes to that. Now we've seen over the last few races since you've started here. We've got the Florida boys, Bernie Mobbs, Bob Sumnera, and Joe DeSpirito. Those three cars seem to run together a lot. We've taken a lot of notice of you, the 39 and the 17. It seems like you three, when you hook up, you can run together pretty consistently up the front of the pack and be really, really fast. Is that something you guys kind of coordinate, or have you guys found you just kind of work the best together when it's the three of you?
It's just being comfortable with who you're pushing, knowing what line they're going to run. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there I love to run with, but Chuck and Josh, we kind of have the same thought process. It just seems like it's comfortable when we're running nose to tail.
All right, I got you, man. Again, congratulations on win number 2 in 3 races. Really excited to see what you can do in these last couple weeks before the playoffs as you make your way up through the point standings to get into contention for that. Anybody you want to give a shout out to or a thank you to?
Well, like I said, shout out to Bernie. He was a great pusher. Shout out to Chuck and Josh. Obviously, we ran well together and made it hard for the lines to pull up. As always, thanks to my wife. She lets me come and play with you guys on Thursday and never really complains at all. And another big shout out to my daughter, Lexi, and her family. They were tuned in tonight, and she was messaging me throughout the race. And they get a kick out of watching Papa play. So I love that they watch. But yeah, it's just a great series, great racing, and I've still got a pretty big points hill to climb, but I'm not out yet.
Well, that's Tim Nofsker. He brings it to victory lane for the second time in 3 weeks. Quite a momentum streak you're on here, Tim, and we look forward to seeing what you can do here in these final 2 races as you try and make your way up into the top 20 in points.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for covering the race. I've been watching the races throughout the week, and you guys are spot on. So keep doing what you're doing.
Well, we appreciate it. That's Tim Nofsker. And with his trip to victory lane here tonight, Zach, obviously everything is still unofficial. A lot of, you know, reviewing by the admins to figure out who finished where having to take place. But just like looking at some of the drivers that Nofsker was around, I'm not sure a lot of positions are going to change in terms of where they finished in the running order. Nofsker, with the win here tonight, currently is scored as gaining 5 spots in the standings. He's now up to 23rd in the points, and he's only 33 points out of that 20th position in the standings. He was 54 points coming into this race, so he was able to gain 19 points there. So certainly not mathematically out of the realm of possibility that he'd be up in the top 20 at the conclusion of race 10.
Well, and again, you also have to take into consideration those 19 points. That's with a win. That's making up a lot of points with a win. Uh, could he win these last couple races before the playoffs? I believe he can. He has the speed, he has the talent, and the knowledge to do so. But it's still going to be a fight. He's still going to have to work for it every single week. I think with a couple top 5s, maybe even a couple top 3s, if he can keep himself out of trouble and muster some good runs, he's going to be right there at the door on 20th place come playoff time, without a doubt.
Yeah, it depends on the finishes of him compared to the people that are ahead of him, and it also, the car count will play a huge factor into that as well. If he does make it into the top 20, this win now ties him with Grant Wesley and Bob Seminara for the most wins this season with 2. So if he makes it in, he would be tied with them for the number 1 seed, I do believe. Well, number 2 seed, I should say, because of course, DeSpirito right now looks like he may have that regular season championship, those 10 bonus points. On the flip side, though, Nofsker having a good day. Jeremy Jeffries, however, he's got quite a mountain to climb now after a very poor performance after we saw him barrel rolling on the front straightaway. He unofficially dropped down to the 26th position in points, and right now the gap between him and 20th in standings is 44 points.
Yeah, and that 44-point deficit over 2 races without another win is going to be extremely difficult to overcome. He took a big tumble in the trioval today, and I think he pretty much knew as well as we did that he needed to get those solid top threes, top fives these last few weeks. So having just an absolutely disastrous outing tonight, and again, not of his own doing, nothing he could have done about it. It was an incident that happened up in front of him. And, as we've talked about since week number one, this is the nature of super speedway racing. And, he's really going to have to work hard these last couple weeks. He's really probably going to even need a win to be able to pull that off.
I can't remember if it was Despirito or if it was Wesley that mentioned the fact, here tonight with the big car counts, a lot of the checking up led to a lot of those wrecks. But I have to wonder too, do you think that also with the fact that we are continuing to wind down this regular season, spots are up for grabs for drivers that are inside the top 20? If they go to victory lane, it's an automatic ticket. Drivers are currently inside the top 10 in points, trying to point their way in. And in the case of guys like Knopfsker and Jeffries, they're outside the top 20, trying to point their way into the top 20, already going to victory lane. Do you think because of the fact that we've only got 2 more races now left in the regular season before that playoff grid is put together, that we're seeing kind of the aggressiveness ramp up in these races?
Oh, absolutely. And if you recall at the before the start of tonight's race, that was actually something that I talked about. With it really kind of clamping down and, the pressure rising, there's a lot of guys that are trying to make up points or keep themselves in the top 20 in points. That way they can hopefully get themselves a victory. And if you're in the top 10 right now, Josh Metallic, another guy who we talked about, who was just in 7th position in points, without a win, a lot of things could change between now and the playoffs. If 2 more guys win, could he find himself on the outside? It is entirely feasible if he doesn't have a victory, but we'll see what happens moving forward.
2 races left before we're going to find out those 10 drivers to battle for the championship, and a lot of storylines heading into those final 2 races. And we'll be covering the first of those with race number 9 next week here at Talladega Superspeedway. But you said it, Zach, a crazy one here tonight, a rather unusual one, but that seems to be Talladega's moniker. You never know what you're going to get, but I appreciate you joining me here tonight for this one.
Yep. Thank you again, Seth. I really appreciate it. Shout out to the crew at RTG. Seth, you, Matt, everybody with Flatcaster. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to work with you guys, and really excited and amped up to see what these final 2 races before the playoffs are going to play out to look like.
Who will make those last-minute moves to get into the postseason? We'll be finding out as we continue on the Talladega Challenge for RTG season next Thursday night. For Zach Fremont, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening as you've been watching another broadcast this evening courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.